us, one of us. And just a thug like one of us. Looking for love in the club like one of us. Trying to make it off the slums like one of us.
Alright, so we got Sam and Dean and... Wait. I don't need to write anything here. I can literally read from my previous script. Look. So, this is the script for this episode. And the previous episode I wrote, you know and I know that the writer of episode 1420 will have to invent some solution on the fly. They can have Dean pick up a paperclip. Okay, that should be gun. And bam, suddenly you can take out Jack. It's bad writing. Either the next episode will have to invent a literal Deus Ex Machina from Chuck, who was there, or Mr. Goo, who was there, or Billy, or they will have to redo the plot arc of the box again, and this time accomplish all the same story beats in 45 minutes they previously took multiple episodes.
From falling in love for my knees every night, placing calls up above, seem like God won't pick up.
Well, the dumpster fire that Jack in the Box lit continues to burn unimpeded. We start this episode with the show at least attempting to explain why the cannon didn't quite work last time, even though that made no sense. I guess I should be happy the showrunner's at least attempting, even if the answer is wrong to explain these things, or go back to the way Carver was and explain nothing at all. What angers me most is that there was just no need for this. Like I said in my previous review, things were organically moving for a divide between the brothers. Castiel disagreed against Dean, and he could have just went and freed Jack on his own. From there, you would have Sam and Dean discussing what should be done, while Castiel and Jack went around and talked about stuff. And look, that's what we got! So, why did the whole breaking of logic and storytelling accomplish? What do we get in this episode that we couldn't have gotten without that? The whole stop lying scene? Instead of Jack just walking down the street by himself, you can just have Castiel walking down the street with him, and then they observe all the humans going around, and he just freaks out and says those two words there. See? No need to break canon. And can I also just say, while that bit was entertaining to a point, and that point is the writers lose the ability to understand the difference between being honest and oversharing. Not telling every one of you watching this video the full and intimate details of my life, both of them, does not mean I'm lying to you. It just means it's not relevant. And then along the politics lines, it bugs me in general whenever no lying is used in a story. The author always seems to assume that it's impossible for people to disagree honestly. Well, a colorblind man telling you that there's no such thing as rainbows isn't lying. He literally can't perceive them. So if you can't conceive of someone disagreeing with you and from that conclude they must be lying, I'm sorry, you need to get out more and expand your imagination. In fact, while we're online, I need to talk about the whole writer's lie line, because that just pisses me off, and it goes a long way towards explaining why the last few seasons have been such, well, shit. I write for fun. I have several friends that write for fun. I also have a few friends that are honest to chuck real, published, professional writers. So yes, I'm a little invested in this. The truth of the matter is this. Writers lie in order to explain deeper truths. Let's take an example for those who think this is a contradiction. Was there ever a literal, actual shepherd boy who cried wolf one too many times? It's not impossible, but as far as we know, the answer is no. There is no literal boy who cried wolf because we have no idea what his name was or where the story supposedly takes place. But is the idea, the lesson of the story, is that true? Yeah, nobody believes a proven liar even when they are telling the truth. And if you're not convinced, ask a random sampling of people their opinion of politicians and used car salesmen. You see, the exact details of The Boy Who Cried Wolf may be a lie in the technical sense, but the core of the story, its teaching to us about human nature and rational thought, remains true. Likewise, there may not be a literal Sam and Dean Winchester out in the world hunting things and saving people, but its original 5 seasons told us true things about family and humanity and sacrifice and classic cars. And in this episode, it's hard not to think the writer doesn't understand that. So, what else would we have missed had Cass freed Jack from the box instead of having Jack break out? Sam and Dean being desperate for a solution? The two of them needing a new MacGuffin? Well, then the solution's obvious. After Jack's free, you just have Castiel go and destroy the box himself. Or have Jack blow it up from the outside. Simple solution without ruining canon. And that brings us to Chuck. Like I said, I hang out virtually in real life with writers, and the way they sometimes talk about characters can seem odd to someone that's never really wrote. Writers will talk about characters taking on a life of their own. You'll have them going down a path and want them to head right, but they seem to pull left. How can that be? These guys are fictional. Doesn't the writer control everything? Well, that's the difference between a hack and a skilled artist. Supernatural giving God a role in the series as a writer, I admit, was a clever recognition of this tendency. And historically, it's always portrayed Chuck as an artist, concerned principally with his characters having the most freedom to live out their lives. Until this episode. Right at the moment Chuck used the words, "no," and "you're supposed to," because the being that was supposed to be God in this series, using those words, goes against the very concept of free will, which the series had repeatedly established him being in favor of. If they wanted a moment of the boys realizing the puppet strings, they could have had Chuck's character intact by having him demonstrate excitement at the scene. Have him state that he had no idea if Dean would shoot or be merciful, and that ignorance, that not knowing what'll happen, it's just so exciting. It's just what makes free will so entertaining. Then you have the guys react. We're real people. This is more than a story to us, or whatever. You know, a way you can have them rebel without ruining Chuck's character. See, that's the other problem with this episode, is because it feels less like the guys are yelling at God and more like they're yelling at us, the audience. And it's hard to argue with them that our fanatical devotion and consistent ratings have kept them on the air and suffering all these years. But that's kind of a rude thing to do as a storyteller. And this ruins the illusions of the world. Like I said before, stories should endeavor to convince the audience that there's more going on beyond their camera. Beyond what we see, there is an entire world out there. And we're just looking at one little section, one little piece of it. Historically, through the show's run, it's usually tried to maintain that there were other people out there in the world who lived and mattered, and everything the Winchesters were doing were for their sake. Nope. Turns out in this episode, we get confirmation from Chuck himself that he only cares about the Winchesters. And if they're unhappy, he'll destroy the whole world. Never mind those other 7 billion souls out there. We're not even given a moment from these two to see if they're willing to make another sacrifice here. That, maybe if Chuck focused on them, then there's other innocent people whose lives he's not ruining. How does one care about a show that takes every opportunity to mock the very effort of caring, which all but insults you and says, well, you should be shot for being invested? Then the whole thing closes with Billy and Mr. Goo talking to Jack in the Big Empty. What? What? How is Jack in there? What is Jack in there? He spent the entire previous minutes of runtime talking about he had no soul. So what's being talked to? Someone commented on the previous video, I think it was Night Sky. Shout out to you. And if I was wrong, apologies. They were surprised the previous episode earned a whole salt shell. Well, 1419 earned this because, well, there was something of a decent episode in the first half, 2/3 of it, and you could see a quality outing potentially being made from the raw materials there if they just worked at it a bit more. This is a half salt shell episode. For me personally, I previously listed Season 8 as probably the worst season finale just for me because I felt a lot of it had very poor setup and ran counter to a lot of the things the show had set up. Well, good news, Sacrifice. This is now officially the worst the show has done as a finale, since this episode can't even maintain logic within its own runtime. The only thing even keeping it at a half shell is that the actors turn in a pretty good performance, and I have to admit that the ending looked neat visually, and you could tell there was a lot of money in it, even though it made no damn sense. So it looks like Season 15 is going to try to set up for the boys fighting God. At least that's where it looks like they want to go. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong. But my bet is that's what they'll want to aim for. Last villain, who else do you do? And probably the worst of it is they had established heaven was in trouble. 14 years, they keep saving the world. What if the 15th year was them saving the afterlife? Would have been something interesting, different, and pretty epic. As it is now, Season 15 fills me with trepidation. My next video, I'll do a review of Season 14 as a whole, and then we'll see where the hiatus takes us.